I swear to God, if this video ends up attracting salty company stands, ugh. Hey everyone, it's Catching Tees here. Welcome to my channel, where today we are discussing this weird shift that I've noticed in the industry that's been creeping in for a few years now, but just really went off the rails this year. And that shift is big three companies losing their grip on the industry. I think it's evident to everyone the growth of smaller K-pop companies, both in number and in success, but nothing really jumped out to me as a true threat until HYBE happened, and ever since then, I feel like things have just been slowly falling apart for big three companies. I'm not saying that HYBE is the sole reason, but we'll get into all of that. I'm going to go company by company and explain all of the internal issues that I see there, and then go over some external factors that I've noticed as well. But before I do that, quick disclaimer, because I know how it is. I'm not stupid. I know the big three companies aren't really going anywhere anytime soon unless something really catastrophic happens. This is just me pointing out that they don't have the same absolute chokehold that they used to and explaining why I think that is. Also, this isn't me coming for your faves because I'm going to mention a lot of groups here. This has next to nothing to do with the artists themselves and much, much, much more to do with the companies that are managing them. And if you get butthurt because I say something bad about a company, well, then I ask you to touch some grass and reevaluate your priorities before bothering me about it. Okay, with that out of the way, let's get started. I'm like, hello, 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 where you been all my life? So I figured I would start with what I think is the easiest company to explain and then work up to the hot mess that is SM right now. YG is in a very strange place right now for a big three company, and they really only have themselves and their dungeony habits to blame for it. Historically, YG has had some of the most memorable groups in K-pop. They're known for their presence, rapping, and general I'm too cool for you image, which works great until it's overdone. You see, there's only so many ways to say I'm better than you before it starts to get a little stale. Did I just unintentionally come for Blackpink? Yes. Whoops. I think they've noticed that and tried to diversify some of the content that they put out, especially with some of Treasure's new stuff like Hello and Going Crazy. It's nice that they've put in some work there, but the big issue is one that I haven't seen them move to fix. That issue, of course, is the ever-present YG dungeon. Most people only bring up the dungeon when talking about Blackpink, which is valid since they're the ones most affected by it, but I also want to talk about their trainees because here's the thing. They're a big three company. They have loads of talented people clamoring to work for them. They have more than enough money to debut new groups or soloists, and what do? Not debut anyone. Literally, they just haven't debuted anyone. Ever since like Treasure, I think. And yes, I know Baby Monster is coming, but that group has been quote unquote in the works for like half a decade now, and we're just getting it. This isn't me saying that they need to debut a new artist every single year, but I am saying that when combined with how few comebacks their existing artists have, and how several of their groups are reaching or have reached the end of their contracts, YG is literally going to run out of idols and fans to support them. As of right now, not including Baby Monster since they haven't debuted yet, YG only has 7 groups active under the main label, 2 of which I've never heard of. One is, of course, Blackpink, their main moneymaker, whose contract is up in August. Other than that, there's Winner, who will still be around until 2026, as will Akmu. They also have Big Bang, who renewed their contracts in 2020, but I can't find how long that contract is. And TOP has left YG individually, and they've been down a member for a while after the whole Burning Sun fiasco, so I'm not quite sure how that group fits in right now since I haven't really followed them. Treasure should also be good until 2027, but they also lost a couple members last year, so they're kind of another one that I'm a little unsure about. Ikon just left to go to another agency, and looking at what's left if Blackpink doesn't renew, I think the main YG label could find themselves in a bit of trouble down the line, especially if Baby Monster flops. They really need to stop waiting until the very last second to debut new groups and get on top of things for once. I mean, one girl group for 7 years? That's ridiculous from a big three company. And I understand that Blackpink makes a lot of money and kind of steals the show, but you have to be mindful about what happens once this current generation fades out. Look at what Big Hit did with BTS and TXT. Yes, BTS are still the main moneymakers, and TXT caught some flack for being their younger counterpart at first, but because Big Hit started earlier with TXT, they were able to build a brand slowly, and now they're one of the front runners of the fourth generation boy groups. If BTS hadn't renewed their contracts, yeah, it would have hurt their wallets a lot, but Big Hit wouldn't have been absolutely screwed. I don't have that same faith in YG because the only reason that people are paying attention to Baby Monster is because they're a YG group. As soon as that good old Big Three privilege wears off after the first year or so, people will lose interest if they aren't a hit. And there's always the chance that Salty Blinks could be actively trying to tear them down with rumors. And that could leave YG in a very tough spot, especially if their other artists don't re-sign down the line. I'm not gonna lie, out of the big three, JYP is probably my favorite of the bunch, but ugh, do I have words? Almost everything I say here isn't going to apply to their self-producing groups, so Stray Kids and like sometimes Twice, but the groups that have no creative control are just a mess. I probably don't even need to say this because it's so obvious, but the creative direction and management of JYP has been whack for the past year at least. The fact that O.O and Sneakers happened in the same year is just baffling to me. Like, did we learn nothing? Did we really learn nothing here? It seems like JYP is floundering when it comes to concepts, especially in the girl group realm. Every time that I see a new comeback from them, it just feels like they're either throwing whatever they can at the wall to see what sticks or copying trends in the industry like a year after they've already happened. n.mixx's entire concept is just songs with the same structure as aespa's Next Level, but without producers who know how to pull it off. And can anyone tell me what itzy's concept even is at this point? Please, because I have no idea. Their debut was so well done, and then the whole I love myself concept went out the window after Not Shy happened, and since then, all they've had left for a brand is just putting random noises in their music. Don't even get me started on Sneakers and the horrendous marketing that went into that. Regardless of your opinion on the song, I think we can all agree that them releasing the royal and elegant concept photos before saying psych and dropping the Disney Channel looking teasers was not the move. Also, the fact that they released whole parts of the song way before it dropped makes no sense. Sneakers is probably the saddest excuse of marketing I have ever seen, which is saying something in this industry. Nothing at JYP feels cohesive right now, and it makes them look like they have no idea what they're doing. Which, to be fair, could be true. The recent and sudden departure of Jinny from n.mixx doesn't help matters much either. I honestly feel awful for those girls because they're so talented and could easily be the top of their generation right now, but JYP has just never had any idea about what to do with them. I also want to point out this weird decrease in production quality that I haven't seen anyone else talking about, but has been bothering me ever since Mafia in the Morning. When I heard Mafia in the Morning, I almost didn't believe it was an itzy song because the mixing and production was so bad. I have heard several broke Nugu groups with better production quality. It sounds tinny and echoey, and I'm sorry that I can't describe this more eloquently because I don't know a ton about production, but a big three company has no excuse for this. And the worst part is that it keeps happening. I could hear it in Twice's Can't Stop Me. It's in almost all of itzy's B-sides. Listening to n.mixx, I never feel like Lily's voice comes through in their tracks, It always sounds slightly fuzzy or muffled, and it's such a shame because she's such a fantastic vocalist. The lack of consistency in just about every medium from JYP is what I feel is causing a decline in the reception of their groups. They either need to find a way to create a stable and unique image for their groups or let them produce for themselves to create their own identity. Otherwise, I'm afraid fans will continue to be disappointed by the releases coming from JYP. Oh boy, hold on to your seatbelts because SM has been an absolute crapshoot ever since 2023 started. So let's get into the most recent and obvious issue. The drama with Lee Soo-man and his shares have basically set the entire company on fire. For those of you who are unaware, Lee Soo-man is the founder of SM Entertainment, who stepped back in 2010 but still held 18.4% of their shares, which is a massive amount, and still allowed him to play a pretty significant role in the company decisions. That is until this year. As soon as February hit, just instant chaos. On the 3rd, SM announced that they were restructuring the company to essentially get rid of Lee Soo-man's influence in the company. Immediately, everyone was like, wait, so who's taking this 18.4% share? And for some reason, rumors started flying that HYBE would, but no way! Lee Soo-man's selling to a direct competitor that hasn't even said anything about getting involved with SM? Crazy. And it seemed like that was going to be it when Kakao purchased a 9.05% share of the company on February 7th, making them the second largest shareholder, much to the mixed feelings of K-pop fans. Within the same 24-hour period, Lee Soo-man announced plans to sue SM for their business practices, even though he was part of the business practices, and things were just really out of hand. Well, it got even crazier when HYBE said, yes, we are considering buying some shares on February 9th. Before people could even react and process what that would even mean, they announced like 5 hours later, yeah, we bought 14.8% of Lee Soo-man's shares and now are the biggest shareholder in our competitor's company. What? Come again? Pardon? And then, because no, there's still more, then SM released a whole video towards the end of February basically trying to frame HYBE as this big villain when everyone thought that this had kind of passed, and it was just very strange. Like, the tone of the whole video was giving Tati and James Charles drama vibes. It just seemed very petty to me, especially when they were showing all of these numbers, trying to make HYBE look like they're irresponsible with money when we know damn well that SM was basically built off of fraud, and SM was also trying to make it sound like HYBE was going to destroy SM's creative control and force their artists into horrible new concepts when we know damn well that most SM artists are throttled around by the company anyways. Hi, so editing catching teas here. Even more has happened since then. Because Kakao raised their stakes up to like 35% of SM shares, which is insane. And then HYBE announced that they're drawing out of the deal later on. So it's been a hot mess, even more than I thought. Back to your regularly scheduled program. Bye. It's just such a weird situation, and none of it has been a good look for SM. It feels like they're out of control on the business front considering how fast all of this spiraled. But moving away from the recent business drama, I feel like SM has also had a bit of a branding issue for the past couple of years, and it's progressively getting worse. For a more in-depth exploration of the issue, I highly recommend watching Felt's video for a full breakdown. They do a really nice job of breaking down the issue, but it's basically coming down to SM focusing so heavily on the company brand and relying on that prestige that they aren't thinking about what's best for each of their artists. And I feel like nothing illustrates this better than Super M and Girls on Top. When they debuted, people were super excited about these groups because we got to see some of the most legendary idols across multiple generations working together. However, the novelty wore off pretty fast, and people began to realize that taking the time to promote these super groups that no one really asked for long term is taking away from the regularly scheduled comebacks of the normal groups that have way more established support. You can really see it with aespa. Their last comeback was July 8th of last year, and at that point they were already fighting off IVE's mounting popularity and New Jeans' hype. Since then, we've had IVE release After Like, New Jeans exploded on a global scale unseen by rookies, LE SSERAFIM gained a ton of traction with Anti-Fragile, people keep talking about n.mixx's High Notes and DICE's live performances, Idol released Nude, which had one of the most revolutionary messages in K-pop for a hot minute, itzy has had not one, not two, but 3 comebacks, and where is aespa? Oh, right. They did like a Christmas song with Red Velvet, and then some of them did some SM Town stuff, and some of them were in Girls on Top in that comeback that flopped. But like, where's aespa? Just aespa, because they should have been releasing more music by now to keep up with how lethal the girl group space is. But the members are too busy doing general SM crap to focus on a much needed comeback. And this applies to their other groups too. You may not see the decrease in comebacks with NCT, but you definitely see how overworked some of them are. I don't know how Mark and Haechan haven't just keeled over. Just with NCT subunit activities, those two have had no less than 4 comebacks a year since 2017, multiple years getting as high as 6 comebacks a year. Throwing in Super M, Mark has had 8 comebacks in 2020. 8! And that's not even considering tours, SM Town stuff, other promotions. And don't even get me started on Haechan. The man was having heart palpitations, and SM went, yeah, I guess you can have a break before the next comeback. It's like SM has both the opposite and exact same problem as YG. There's too much happening at once, but we still hardly get to see a group just make a normal comeback. It's to the point that all of their groups feel like they're blurring together, and I literally can't find a distinct identity for any of them. Sure, there are some traits that some of their groups generally stick to, but it feels like all of them share a single identity. And if your groups don't have individual identities, then what do they have? Well, I guess they still have the brand name, and so the cycle continues. SM needs to diversify their groups again, or things will become so muddled and overwhelming that K-pop fans will just give up. Experimental music is great until all of your experiments start looking and sounding the same. Once again, I'm going to point you towards Felt's video because she phrases a lot of things better and brings up some other points that I think are interesting, but I've talked about SM for way too long, so I need to move on. So I already went over the whole SM share situation, but I want to bring up just how HYBE's very existence and founding threw a wrench into the entire industry. There's a reason the big 3 are called the big 3, and it's because they were always the ones on top without a doubt. Over multiple generations, they have churned out group after group and continued to have massive success without anyone really coming close to touching them. And then BTS happened. Obviously, the one company of Big Hit wasn't going to be enough to pose a threat, but when all of these smaller companies banded together to create HYBE, now there's a problem. For generations, the big 3 hadn't had to really defend their positions at the top because no one even came close. They were like the untouchables of K-pop. It's the big 3. Of course they'll be successful because they always have been and always will be. When HYBE emerged, I and many other people felt this weird shift in the industry where all of a sudden it was like the big 3 felt the need to suddenly start doing more and trying new things and be better than everyone else. And they haven't really had to do that for over a decade now. Meanwhile, HYBE is full of companies that have been trying to claw their way to the top with $5 in a dream. They know how to find overlooked talent, be creative, and innovate because it was the only way that they were ever going to survive before. Now that they have the financial backing and management guidance from HYBE, that kind of creativity is being brought into the industry at the big three level, and that is terrifying for the big three. But it's not only HYBE that's threatening the big three. While at a much smaller scale, smaller companies are rising up to take their little shares of the market ever since K-pop exploded globally. I attribute this to the fact that international fans don't care about the big three. They weren't raised on any particular groups, they just found music that they liked and kept exploring from there. And many of these people started with BTS, a group that came from a tiny company and had no other groups under the label. People were forced to find other music for themselves, which made it way more likely for them to stumble across smaller groups. And people stuck by these groups because rooting for the underdog is a great feeling, and it makes them feel incredibly attached and invested in what happens to these groups, giving them very dedicated and very loyal fan bases. Y'all, I stan Dreamcatcher and Ateez are my olds. I know this effect intimately, okay? And if anything, a lot of international fans hate massive conglomerates and corporations. In Korea, it's kind of just accepted that a few very, very, very rich people run everything, but the rest of the world isn't like that. If anything, Westerners are the opposite and adamantly oppose monopolies and power imbalances. There's a reason the phrase "eat the rich" exists in English. So these people are much more likely to snub the big three in favor of supporting the little guys that don't get the attention they deserve. And something tells me the big three didn't account for that. It's almost like culture shock, but in business form and on a massive scale. As K-pop continues to go more global, I think the big three's vice grip on the industry will continue to steadily slip more and more. So those are my thoughts about the state of the big three in 2023. When looking at all the politics in K-pop, the last few years have been wild, but I feel like no one has really sat back and summed things up, so I wanted to kind of do that. I hope I was able to fit in everything without this getting too long because, wow, a lot goes on here. Okay, but that does it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think about this topic in the comments below. Do you agree, disagree? Is there anything you'd like to add? Am I entirely wrong and you think that the big three are going stronger than ever? Share your thoughts with me because I'm curious if I'm the only one thinking this, and I would love to talk about it more. Also, if you liked the video, please drop a like and subscribe to the channel as it really helps me out. Thanks again for watching, and I will talk to you all next time. Bye!